Okay, so here we have experiment 1. This is the Building Safety Act 2022, a very verbose piece of legislation, quite a few pages. We also have the explanatory notes for the Building Safety Act, also quite a few pages. That's 207, right to the bottom. 408, fun. Right, so this is the Python script. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our rather two large documents here. I'm going to pop them into the text to PDF folder, and we're just going to go find the PDF to text conversion script here. Hit run. Just let that cook. It'll be a few minutes, and we'll just wait for it and come back in a moment. Okay, that's now done. So both documents have now been converted to text files. We'll just pop them open, and you can see they're no longer PDFs. That means we're ready to ingest. Okay, so let's explain the ingestion process really quickly. The ingestion process is where we take a text document and we convert it to a vector store so it can be read by the AI using a similarity lookup. Okay, so once we have the text files prepared, we can now ingest them. Keep in mind the text files don't just have to be PDFs, they could be books, website information, literally anything, information we've collected. So we'll run the ingestion script. That will just now fire up. That'll take about 5 minutes to convert those rather large documents into a vector store, and then we'll be able to do something with them. Okay, those have now completed. Documents have been ingested and converted into vectors, and now I'm in a position where I can start to interrogate the information. Okay, we have a few ways we can interrogate information. We have a chatbot that we can just simply ask questions, which I can just fire up using this tool here. Alternatively, we can start to add in structured queries and build page plans. So, for example, I could ask it to summarize summarize the Building Safety Act 2022, and we hit enter. Or rather, let's say, give me a detailed summary. Just wait for that to process. So this takes a few moments. I'll hit pause. So here we are. It's given as an output here. Just a very brief outline to say it's a new piece of legislation in the UK that aims to improve the safety standards of living. So it's this in from the documents that we've got. Now this is a very, very basic question, but if we want to, we can start to ask some slightly more advanced questions. So if we take a look at this. Let's have a look. So we know it's broken down into parts. So we've got parts 1. If we just go here, so we can say the overview of the Act. Part 2, Part 3, Part 4, Part 5. So given that it's so long, it would be more meaningful Part 6. Yeah, so there's 6 parts. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, let's go just grab the names here for a second, just so we've got a bit more context. So part 6 is general. I'm just going to move this over to the side for a second. Okay, what else do we have? Other provisions about safety standards, that's good. Have that. Let's see what else there is. 4. Building risks, Buildings Act 1984, regulator and its functions. Okay, brilliant. So we've got a couple of ideas here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this information to try and extract some outlines that we could use to then build. We'll just ask another question. Give me a list of 10 common frequently asked questions about the Building Safety Act 2022. And again, we're just going to see what this comes up with. As for the other exercise, I've built a list of probable things people want to know about, given the breadth and scope of the document. There's 6 parts, and there's also the overview as well. So let's see what we can fish out of this. Alright, so we've got a series of questions. We'll grab these as well. These look like they're going to be quite useful, and we'll see exactly what this document can do for us. Alright, so we've got a set of questions here. We're going to put the questions into a Scratch file called the keyword file here. So just get that to open up, remove everything that was in there and just place these in. We have a total of 17. Now what we do with this is we pop down to a set of scripts we have here. I'm going to create some outline prompts. Given it's a legal document, I want to use an outline prompt that I've already pre-prepared called the technical basic outline, or template basic outline technical. So we'll just hit go there. That creates the prompts ready for us to go, and now we can run the outline generator. Again, it's going to read each of these line by line, and we'll attempt to create a page plan based upon the question, the information contained within the two legal documents, and how the AI is then able to appropriately scan through those documents and find pertinent information. Let's find out and see if this works. Okay, so what the technical outline does is, based upon the contents of the files and the prompt that's been provided, it creates an outline for a document. So introduction, scope, and it postulates or proposes questions that we will need to answer to appropriately answer this particular subheading. Part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, 8 rather. So we've got 8 there. Okay, this is introduction to part 2. In here for a legal firm that I've added. So these may and may not be completely required. Again, it's just down to really what you're writing about. So obviously we have part 2 here. It doesn't look like I did a particularly great job at part 1, but part 1 in the document does appear to be quite light. And this will just continue to process each line within this keyword file until a full outline has been created. So let's just check. Yeah, this knows it's part 3. And we can have a look back at the document itself, just see what part 3 contains, just to see if it's accurate. Looking pretty solid actually. Okay, great. So we'll just wait for this to finish. So if we're starting to look at this, what we can see if we compare. So this is introduces it again, which it will just do. Explanation part 4: what are high risk buildings, and we can start to see here meaning of high risk buildings, etc., and so forth. So yeah, definitions of risk. Looks reasonably solid. So again, we'll just wait for this to continue going. As the process is running, what it's doing is it's saving the outputs. Just saw another one pop in there, and the outline's being saved into an outlines basic folder here. So you can see each of these as they pop in. This is the first one that's just generating for a question at the moment. It's not populated it, but you can see here and so forth. So these will be used in the next step, and I'll explain this as I go. Okay, each of the outlines has now been produced with each subheading and a series of very detailed questions that are required to answer the subheading in totality. Now we're ready to start writing. So to start writing, we have to move the subheadings into a specific folder, and we're now prepping for writing. Probably combine these steps to be fair, but it's just left over from an older script. Okay, that's now done, and if I pop up into the outlines and not the outlines, but not output but outlines here, and outlines clean folder, a few leftovers from an earlier project I'm just going to get rid of because we don't want those. So I'll just delete those quickly. Right, we'll just check the Outlines Improved folder here. Also get rid of those. So it shouldn't have been in there. Alright, so we're going to move these into the Improved folder. Done. Improved Outlines Cleanup. And now prep for writing. And we should, if we now look in the Outlines Clean folder, well, I just need to refresh that, but they will be there. Okay, we're now looking at the Outlines Clean folder here. What you'll notice is each of the outlines has been condensed to, each of the sections has been condensed to a single line, forming the basis of a prompt with various writing instructions. So we're now ready to start the writing process, and that's as simple as clicking on the writing step, which is here. We hit run. Same process again, but this time what this will do is it will output to a single file, processing each prompt one at a time. It will save the outline in Markdown, and it will answer each of these questions, potentially also applying Markdown to each section depending upon how long. The information contained within will be detailed, it will be verbose in places, and there will be a bit of repetition because sometimes it will draw the same information, but that's something that's cleaned up in the editing step. Right, so here you can see the first output, answering each question, breaking each section down, making it digestible. And then we have an overview of it as well. So this is what we'll see in the output file as it begins to write this. So if I move up to the output here under output llama, you can now see that particular section has been written. Reads perfectly, and it's drawing that information and interpreting that information directly from the legislation using the LLM, or the large language model in this case, OpenAI, as purely a processing facility to interpret the language, not as a prediction facility. So what we get back is fundamentally a lot more accurate than if we were just used to, if we were to use the base language model out of the box, as so many people do. Alright, so as you can see, the outputs are being written to this folder here, and we have a pretty beefy document. So if I just take this out, for example, it's written in Markdown. So what that means is if we just bring up a browser, I'll just use this as an example, so Markdown to HTML, pop that in there, and here we have a complete document and a complete rundown and overview of the Building Safety Act 2022, which is a piece of UK legislation which is scaring the bejesus out of a lot of legal professionals at the moment as they come to terms with it and learn the ins and outs and the nuances. So just for the sake, if I just go to Google Docs here, because I've just converted it, so we'll just try and get Google Docs to pay for itself. Go to Docs, new document, paste that in, and that right there, 13 pages. It does have American spelling though. If I do a word count, yeah, 5,000 words, going into exquisite detail of the legislation. Well, now if I want to, I do actually have a, let's say, an editing tool which is greater, and also a tool that will flip the spelling from American English to British English to cut down on the editing time. So you can see the Z's here. So it's literally just a click of the button. Brill! Okay, so as you can see, the writer's still chunking along, and it's going to take a little while to finish, but we're going to jump ahead as we've got a finished document now. So the next step is to, we've already prepped it for writing. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to format it. There we are. So this is known as agent formatting, and this is going to allow me to pass it over to the editors. So we'll just prep that, and that'll be ready to go in 2 moments. Now we have a couple of options when we get to this point, one of which is that we can create a brief. So there's a brief prompt down here. which is very worthwhile using. So I'm just going to remove the company information that I have here because I don't want to specifically use that. So this is what the brief looks like. I'll just correct the spelling. No, that's fine. I'm free, except after C. So it pulls in a set of tokens that we have, such as the company name, GMB type. We can put company details in here if we so choose. So because I'm doing this, I want to keep references to the company to a minimum. So I'm just going to say here, if at all. So I'll just go and tell it to run the brief outline here, which we'll just do there now. Hit run. That creates a brief, and you can see there's a brief here for absolutely everything. But it's the this document here that we're looking at. I've just noticed it trims the the name before or after the hyphen. I'll have to fix that later, but it's good to be aware of. But anyhow, so we're ready to use the editor. So let's just go ahead and just do that now. So if we pop into the temporary folder, I just want to, because we've got 2 documents on the go, what I don't want to do is I don't want to use the half-completed document, as that would just be a waste. So we'll go into the editor prepped here. So it's the overview. I'm just going to grab hold of the name of that. Oops. Okay, now this is what it looks like. You can see this is now broken down as subheading, section, subheading, section. This is what we're going to feed to the writer editor. So we're about to use something called semi-autonomous agent. I'm just going to pop back up here and just put this in correctly. So that's the main topic there. And we'll just pop that in there as well. Okay, that's good to go. Informational intent, every man, yeah, great. Next up, let's go tell the editor-writer relationship to kick off. So we're going to pick this one. All of these are just kind of different versions of the same thing. So I want to use the technical writer. So we'll hit run, and the conversation starts. Just make sure I did actually remove that as I've intended initially, or else I'll have to stop this and restart it. No, that was a bit silly. Which one's it doing? So let's just check which file it's on. Okay. let's just pause that for a second, and just work our way back. So that one seems finished. Let's do this again, just to be sure. All right, off we go. So I'll just talk you through the basics of this. You have 2 AIs now working in tandem. One is called the editor, and so it's called Mr. Editor, and one is called the writer, or Miss Writer. In this case, it's Mr. Technical Editor and Miss Technical Writer. So the first subheading in the section are passed from, or under the assumption that it was written by Miss Writer to Mr. Editor. Mr. Editor provides a critique, feedback, and then starts to produce, or rather gives the writer feedback. The writer responds, and then starts to write an outline here. Now you can see, because we've put a brief in, the writer editor is incorporating references to the legal firm. It's simplifying the text and making it a little easier to process and digest, shortening it in places as well, and removing duplication. Provides a critique. concludes no further improvements can be made, and then moves on to the next section. Obviously, depending on your use case, there are different types of editor, writer, semi-autonomous agents that can be more creative, that can be SEO optimized, or in this case, a technical writer which is proficient in technical and legal writing. So here again, the synergy between the two kicks off. You can see the editor in this case is now providing feedback to the writer. And as we continue to watch, someone's too fond of the way it's referencing it to the Act, so I could then stop it and then feed back into the brief that when referring to the Building Safety Act 2022, it has to call it by its full name. So let's go back and look at the brief and just see if we can understand what it's doing and why. So we'll come back into the overview here. So we're acting as a legal firm who provide should be solicitors and services. So just tighten this up a little bit. We're writing a page. We'll remove that. Okay. So we've already got the company name there. I don't really want to include it. I'm going to say, do not mention Paul Beavis LLP, or keep any mention to absolute minimum. Use pronouns we and are. Out of the way. Okay, so I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to see how the tone changes. I'll change that to the legal services. Alright, so we'll come to the output. So in the editor here, just delete that quickly, and then we're going to rerun it and see what happens. Because ideally what we want to do, although it's by the documents by Paul Beavis, oops, spelling mistake there, let's just stop it again. Although the documents by Paul Beavis, we want it to be informational, so we don't want it to particularly cite Paul Beavis and throw a call to action in every single opportunity, which we'll do. Alternatively, we can remove any reference to Paul Beavis at all, and that will keep it quite dry. So we'll just have a look and see how the output comes back from the writer as we get the first draft back, and see if that's any improvement. And so this brief section really gives you macro control over each document, but it does mean you sometimes need to fine-tune it, but you don't need it at all. You can just delete it and then just come back, as I say, purely informational. And we can see here now the information we're getting back from this is a lot more detailed because it's not considering the company. It's added a conclusion which goes against the writer's brief. Now the editor should pick that up and give the writer a slap on the knuckles, a slap on the wrist. There we go. So that's picked picked up there that there's a conclusion that's been mentioned, which we don't want. We want each section to logically conclude based upon context. Yeah, revised draft successfully managed to rectify the issues addressed in your prior communication. Perfect. And it's now just coming through and it's producing a revised version, at which point the editor will either be happy and say proceed to the next, or it'll just naturally cycle through 6 writer-editor cycles until it reaches a natural conclusion. Yeah, done. Okay, so that's saying there's no more improvements can be made. It's found it just after 2 revisions. Brilliant, and it's going to move on to the next. And what it will do is it will identify the last section from the traditional agent that contains a hashtag like that or a subheading, and it will then save that to the output file. You can see the prompt cycling through there, and again we're off. We'll just let this run until it reaches its natural end. But yeah, that concludes the demo, at least the core basics, and there are a lot of other nuances that go into this. Say we have multitude of different prompts for different scenarios, with different ways of collecting data. It doesn't just have to be from a PDF. We can collect data from the web, we can collect data from Wikipedia, we can collect data from a multitude of different academic paper repositories. Possibilities are absolutely limitless. There's also a comprehensive topic builder and a question extraction tool, which we'll come on to in the second video later. As I say, that concludes this, and I'll attach a sample for you from this output once it reaches its natural end.